Hello and welcome back to A Splash of Paint. Now it's time to join contemporary oil artist Marion Dutton as she demonstrates the power of underpainting.
Okay, so today I'm going to demonstrate an underpainting of this beautiful King Charles Spaniel. I'm a little biased because he's actually my own little dog called Jerry. Now all an underpainting is we will begin to colour this in one tone. Now I'm using burnt umber and this is oil paint. I'm going into some linseed oil, working that through into the brush, and then I take a little bit of that excess paint off. I want a nice controlled amount of paint. And all I'm doing really is establishing the lights and darks on this portrait. Now I want you to notice how loose the strokes are. I'm not trying to stay in the lines. I'm working very loosely, keeping everything nice and soft. There are no hard edges on a portrait, whether it's a person portrait or a pet portrait. So I'm looking really at the lights and darks. This reddish area of his coat is obviously darker than the whiter fur, so I'm going to get that in first, working quickly and nice and loose. So I'm just scrubbing this paint on there just to get a basic shade, keeping it nice and controlled. So I'm just shading in. We're going to complete this entire portrait in one colour. Just establishing the lights and dark areas. His nose area is obviously darker, and this mouth area. Just keeping everything soft. Now there's some shading within the white fur, and it really doesn't matter what colour fur you're painting, whether it's red fur, white fur, you're painting a black animal, you would still paint it with the burnt umber. You're just establishing the lights and darks. So once I've got a basic colour on, I switch to a slightly smaller brush and I'll start to intensify some of the areas, such as the eye area, start to add some detail. Again, I'm still focusing on lights and darks. Let's get this eyeball in here, which is generally darker than the rest of the fur around there. Again, no real detail at this stage. I'm just looking at what's light and dark. He's got some darker shades within this fur for the eyebrows. Now I like to keep everything soft, so I'll be using an old warm brush to keep all the edges soft as I go. Now I'm going to switch to a slightly smaller brush. These are all the same brushes, they're just varying in sizes. And this time I'm going to dip into a little bit of the thinner and I'll wipe the excess away. Now this becomes an eraser and I'll start to take out some of the lighter areas that I can see in the portrait. Now it's much easier to do it this way than to try and paint around the lights. Is to just get the darker areas in place and then to start pulling out some of the lights. Now I'm constantly wiping as you're picking up the paint, I'm constantly wiping away. So the whole process basically is adding on the darks, taking out your lights and softening as you go, keeping everything nice and soft. So I'm going to go and do a little bit of work on the nose area. Again, it's generally darker, so I'll start to put a base colour in there. And again, this area here under his mouth is generally darker. Just swap again now to the blending brush. These old warm brushes, I never throw anything away. They're absolutely fabulous for keeping your edges soft and using as blenders. A little bit of detail in the nostrils. There's some lovely dark in the nostrils. I'll think of an underpainting as a map for your colour layers. And this will help you when you come to put the colour layers on top of this, that you can see where your lights and your darks are. It takes the complications away when you're painting a portrait like this, because you can just focus on getting your lights and darks in there without worrying about the issue of colour. So again, keeping things soft. I'm constantly jumping from the brush, applying the paint, to a clean old brush to blend it. Keep the edges very, very soft. Now again, I'm going to go back into the thinner and I'm going to start to erase again. So again, always wipe off that excess. You don't want your paint to be dripping wet, and this becomes your eraser. So I'll start to take out some of the lights across the top, and this will bring the nose forward in the face. So I'm constantly wiping that brush. So wherever I see some of the lighter areas in the portrait. Now always be referring to your photograph. And if you see any errors within your drawing stage, this is the time that you can fix them. And there's some lights even within here. We can start establishing some of the fur within the face. All my strokes again are in the direction of the fur. And now I'll start to increase some of the darker areas that I can see. Go into a bigger brush. We've got beautiful dark around here, and this is separating his face from his ears. And you can see this portrait really starting to develop. Now typically a portrait like this would take me a couple of hours at least. And we're not going to be able to show that today, but hopefully you'll see enough of the procedure that it'll encourage you to have a go at this for yourself. So we've got some beautiful darks again at separating the ear on this side. Again, I'm softening all the edges. We don't have any hard edges in portraits. It's got some lovely darks in the ears, and we can really start to get those in now. Again, notice that I'm using a nice big brush, and it's a long wavy stroke. It's long curly hair, so that's the stroke that I'm starting to, you know, if you've got short hair, then you do a short stubby stroke. But with long hair, you'll do a long flowing stroke. Let's start getting some of this shadow under the chin. And again, I'm going to go back to the old warm brush and I'm going to soften up the edges. Now I can see a little bit of shadow even on this white fur between his eyes, so I'll put that in there. And we can start to put in some of this fur stroke. Again, always being aware to follow the direction, the way the hair is growing. Some beautiful darks under his chin, so we can get that in there, really establish where his neck area is. And again, notice that I'm keeping everything very loose. I'm not trying to stay in the lines. Lovely dark on his mouth. He is a very pampered pooch, I will say. One spoilt little dog. So again, softening, softening, softening. All the way through, you will constantly be softening all the edges. Now, you don't have to do an underpainting in one day. It can be done over several days. But just make sure that when you do break off, that you do soften all of your edges. So I'm going to switch now to a slightly larger brush, and I'm going to start to take out some of the hair that I can see to form these eyebrows. Again, I'm aware of the direction that the hair grows. So into the thinner, and then this becomes an eraser. Now you may have to do it once or twice if you don't feel it's lifting the paint. Just dip into the thinner and go over the area again. So come and join me later on in the programme and we'll do a little bit of work on these ears.
It's fantastic to see how underpainting can be used to add detail to create realistic results. And we'll be rejoining Marion a little later as she completes the final stages of today's project. But before we take a little break, it's time to take a look at the latest essential accessory that's been described as amazing, fantastic and even magical. It's the SAA watercolour sponge eraser. And let's take a look how this thing actually works. I've prepared this little sketch and I've put a little bit of a paint in there for you, and I've put a couple of splodges of colour. And just to show you, this is the sponge. It's a very fine sponge, and if you just dampen it and squeeze the excess away, a bit of kitchen roll for wiping up as well. Very simply, we can just take this and we can just wipe away paint, and you can see how effective that is. And if you do a lot of watercolour, it's something what you might actually realise is a bit of a problem, because paint doesn't always come off, and it's something that's good. It even works on a cotton paper. This is a cotton paper, and you can see how simple it actually removes the colour. So if you make a mistake, wash it away, start again. Let's try this on a sky, and I'm going to do a very simple cloud. So if I squeeze the water onto the sponge and then squeeze it until it stops dripping, gather the corner, and I'm going to go into this sky and we're going to twist and move across. And you can probably see already how it's starting to lift the paint off. Get the kitchen roll and wipe it away, and you can see it's making that gentle fluffy cloud effect. Just do one slightly lower down, coming in from this side. Scrub and move. And of course, the more you scrub, the more it comes off. And then take the kitchen roll and just wipe away. And I'm sure you can see what a nice, soft, gentle effect it's giving there. Even in the mountains at the bottom, maybe you want to make a separation in the mountains, you could go in there and you could actually wipe lines away, and you can see how it's making light and dark shades in the mountains there, very simply. And it just makes it look a little bit more realistic, and it's a great way of adding life to a picture. Anyway, it's time for a quick break now, folks, but join us in part 3 as we showcase the lively and loose style of watercolour artist and tutor Louise Bogard, and we take a visit to the picturesque city of Wells to watch master paper makers in action. I'll see you after the break.